The Resident Evil series has been scaring us silly since 1993, spanning a history covering almost 30 games across various consoles. In that time, there have been many high points, delivering a truly horrifying experience. Today I'd like to highlight my favourite 5 games from the series. In at number 5 we had Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. Initially planned as a spin-off to cater to a more action-orientated crowd, Resident Evil 3 at some point in its development was promoted to a mainline entry in the series. Taking place roughly at the same time as Resident Evil 2, the game puts us back in the shoes of Jill Valentine, as she makes her final escape from the rapidly failing Raccoon City. The game introduced new gameplay mechanics such as crafting ammunition and occasional quick-time choices that impacted certain gameplay sequences. However, the star of the show was Nemesis, a bioweapon engineered by Umbrella to hunt down the surviving STARS members from the original game. While elements of a stalking enemy were teased in the B scenario of Resident Evil 2, Nemesis cranked this up several notches, appearing just when you didn't want to see him, saying only STARS. His presence amped up the tension of the overall game, which already delivered a solid and entertaining story and familiar gameplay that fans loved, a certified classic. Number 4. The Resident Evil Remake. The original Resident Evil laid the groundwork for many great games to follow. However, while it had its charm, its dialogue was legendarily poorly delivered. It aged quickly and was always begging for a team to bring it to the level of its creators' imaginations. When 2002 came along and Capcom released a full remake of the original PlayStation game, fans were awestruck. The graphics of the game were incredible for the time, leveraging pre-rendered graphics with 3D models to great effect. The lighting oozed atmosphere, and exploring the mansion again was a thrilling experience. New areas were added to the game, such as exploring the grounds of the mansion, and other areas were expanded upon. Dialogue was totally re-recorded and delivered in a much more natural way, and the game amplified the feeling of a true survival horror experience. This is the blueprint for what a remake should be, very respectful of the original but elevating it in a way that blows the audience away. Number 3. Resident Evil 7. After the disaster that was Resident Evil 6, Capcom needed to return to their roots and deliver a survival horror experience to wash away those memories, and they certainly did deliver. Resident Evil 7 shifts the perspectives into first person, getting you closer than ever to the horror surrounding you. The graphics were excellent, with the lighting especially lending to a very atmospheric experience. The game delivered some of the best villains in Resident Evil history, most notably Jack Baker, a crazed man seen stalking around a sizable chunk of the game. Reminiscent of Nemesis or Mr. X, but dialed up and able to roam the full residence instead of just the scripted spawns. The survivor of the game, Ethan Winters, was a likeable everyman who delivered a much more vulnerable and grounded protagonist in comparison to Chris Redfield, though he did end up a one-man tank towards the end. 7 was an absolute return to form for Capcom, who before this had seemed to lose their edge and revitalised the series in a way that nobody had expected. Number 2. Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 saw the first shake-up in the Resident Evil formulae, ditching fixed camera angles for the first time in a mainline release, even doing away with the traditional T-virus enemies. Forced the return of Leon Kennedy on a mission to rescue the daughter of the US president. Arriving in a beat-up town in Europe, he is quickly attacked by a new type of enemy, the Ganados, and embarks on a mission spanning towns, castles and labs. The game is fondly remembered for its super tight combat. While movement and shooting was still not a part of the gameplay, the shooting and combat in general was responsive, impactful and above all fun. The environments were nicely varied and the weapon selection was excellent. Resident Evil 4, however, for me, struggled in its landing of the story, and its villains, with Salazar being especially painful to endure, and even Lord Sadler being underdeveloped and a little corny. The story mostly lost me when I had to outrun a building-sized statue. Number 1. The Resident Evil 2 Remake. Perfection. The Resident Evil formulae gestated, developed, analysed and delivered so perfectly on a plate for gamers all over. The Resident Evil 2 remake, upon reveal, looked incredible and it did not disappoint. A faithful remake of all the areas in the original game and expanding on some of the smaller ones, with not just a fresh coat of paint but a bucket of atmosphere, intense gore and excellent gameplay. Shooting was tight and responsive, puzzles were devious and engaging, the story, while mostly unchanged, was delivered brilliantly through a well-crafted cutscenes and great dialogue. The package of the game was also immense, with 2 full campaigns featuring Leon and Claire, additional B scenarios with both characters, a host of unlockables for completing in-game challenges. Even without the post-launch DLC, this was a huge value purchase for any gamer at the time and delivered the definitive Resident Evil experience. Let me know what your rankings would have been in the comments below. And until next time, bye bye.